My name is Nancy, and my life was turned upside down the moment I discovered that my husband, Terry, had been unfaithful. We were high school sweethearts, together for 7 years before we said our vows. It felt like our love was meant to last forever. But our fairy tale didn't end as I had hoped. Out of nowhere, one of Terry's employees contacted me, presenting undeniable proof of his affair. Terry wasn't just any husband. He was a well-respected businessman in our small town. For the sake of privacy, I've changed the names in this story. Terry is my soon-to-be ex-husband, and his mother is now Michelle. The shock of Terry's betrayal left me reeling for an entire week. But the person who finally dragged me out of my denial was none other than Terry himself. In a casual tone, he announced that he wanted a divorce, stating he no longer loved me and had already made up his mind. Bewildered, I asked him why, clinging to the hope that it was all a mistake. His answer was stark: he simply didn't love me anymore. When I confronted him about the affair, he paled, clearly caught off guard. His shock quickly turned into denial, as he insisted he was seeking a divorce solely because he didn't love me. I refused to let him off the hook easily, especially after years of dedication to our relationship. I reminded him of our prenuptial agreement, which he had insisted upon to protect himself in case of divorce, aimed at ensuring I wouldn't cheat. Ironically, the tables had turned. Terry tried to convince me to settle things amicably, hoping to sidestep the repercussions of his actions and the prenup he once so fervently championed. This left me at a crossroads, facing the collapse of what I once thought was a perfect marriage and the start of a difficult but necessary journey to reclaim my dignity. I had never intended to cheat, and when Terry first suggested the prenuptial agreement, I thought it was reasonable and agreed. Little did he know that one day, he would find himself on the other side of the betrayal. According to my online research, it seemed he had fallen for someone else, someone who could easily pass for a supermodel. I found a sliver of humor in that painful revelation. However, discovering Terry's infidelity didn't shatter me. Instead, it ignited a fierce determination within me. The love I once felt for him was replaced by a strong resolve to stand up for myself. Terry wanted to leave me for his mistress while also avoiding the financial consequences of our prenup, which only fueled my anger. I made it clear that I wouldn't let him walk away without honoring the agreement we had. His attempts to persuade me to overlook his betrayal for a smooth separation were in vain. I had proof of his affair, and I was ready to leverage it. Terry's reaction was one of frustration and defiance. "Damn you, Nancy!" he shouted, wishing I would simply let him move on peacefully. But how could I, especially after he had pushed for the prenup to safeguard himself? Now that he was the one in the wrong, his threats to complicate my life if I pursued my rightful share only steeled my resolve. After he stormed out, likely to be with his mistress, the emotions I had been trying to suppress surged forth. I cried, not just from sadness, but from a blend of anger and disbelief at how misguided I had been in choosing Terry as my partner. Despite the years I had poured into our relationship, I refused to let him have the final word. In my search for support and guidance, I decided to reach out to Michelle, my mother-in-law. Unlike the stereotypical difficult in-law, Michelle was a wealthy woman whose character stood in stark contrast to her son's. She embodied integrity, kindness, and respect. Despite my fears of losing her due to past experiences of abandonment, I chose to confide in her. Though I withheld some details of my situation, Michelle's initial response was to advocate for reconciliation, a reflection of her nurturing nature. However, I found myself torn. Revealing the full scope of Terry's betrayal risked alienating someone I deeply valued. My history, marred by loss, made the prospect of losing another person unbearable. Even with Michelle's sincere attempts to mediate, I knew reconciling with Terry was not an option. The road ahead felt uncertain, but I was determined to navigate it with dignity, armed with evidence and a clear conscience. After the painful discovery, I made the decision to leave Terry's house and start anew in my apartment. During this challenging time, Michelle emerged as an unexpected pillar of support. I had feared she might side with her son, but she quickly proved me wrong. One day, she urgently requested to meet at my new place, her demeanor heavy with concern. When she arrived, looking particularly somber, she revealed she had something significant to discuss regarding Terry. Before she could elaborate, I preempted her by stating that I was aware of Terry's infidelity, bolstered by evidence from one of his employees. Michelle was taken aback, having only just learned about the betrayal and impending divorce from Terry himself. Her immediate response was one of self-blame. She lamented her perceived failure in raising her son and broke down in tears. Watching her distress filled me with compassion. Michelle had always been more than just a mother-in-law to me. She had become family, offering the maternal support I so cherished. As we shared this emotional moment, Michelle hesitated, indicating there was something even more serious she wanted to disclose. Despite her fear of being judged, I assured her of my unwavering respect and encouraged her to confide in me. What she revealed next was utterly shocking. Terry had concocted a vindictive plan to entrap me, aiming to have me arrested. This revelation painted a disturbing picture of Terry that felt utterly foreign, as if I had never truly known him. The plot against me, as described by Michelle, was like a waking nightmare, challenging everything I thought I understood about my husband. Amid the chaos and threat, Michelle's willingness to stand by me and expose her son's scheme solidified our bond. Her integrity shone through, ensuring that the impending divorce wouldn't sever the familial ties we had formed. When I first fell for Terry, I could never have imagined being so mistaken about someone. Michelle's revelation about Terry's nefarious plan heightened my fears. He intended to stash some of his money in my new apartment and then alert the police, aiming to protect his assets from division during the divorce. Our prenuptial agreement included a clause that would void it if both parties were found at fault, and Terry believed he could exploit this to his advantage. He had confided this scheme to Michelle, mistakenly believing she would keep his secret. Michelle was horrified by Terry's audacity and assured me of her unwavering support, denouncing her son's actions and expressing her shame. Her solidarity was a silver lining amidst the turmoil, reassuring me that nothing could sever the bond we had formed. She viewed me as a daughter, and her determination to stand by me against Terry's malicious intent was both heartening and empowering. With Michelle's encouragement, I devised a strategy to counter Terry's malicious plot. I worried she might hesitate to support a plan that could implicate her son, but her response was surprisingly encouraging. She agreed that my approach was justified under the circumstances, emphasizing the need to protect myself and expose Terry's scheme. I decided to install security cameras in my apartment. Since my building already had CCTV in the common areas, I focused on monitoring the interior. With the help of a friend, I set up a comprehensive surveillance system, leaving no corner unwatched. Eventually, Terry made his move, arriving under the pretense of wanting to discuss our divorce. His act was transparent, but I played along, curious to see how he would execute his plan. As I momentarily stepped into the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of him sneaking something into my desk drawer in the study. Instead of confronting him immediately, I chose to let him think everything was going according to his plan, knowing the cameras were capturing every detail of his actions. After Terry hastily left, his presence as irritating as ever, I eagerly reviewed the footage. I wanted to confirm whether he had indeed planted the cash in my apartment, a crucial piece of his elaborate scheme to entrap me. This evidence would be vital in turning the tables on him, ensuring that his plan would backfire. Rather than inspect the cash placement myself, I wanted to convincingly claim ignorance if the police questioned me, so I checked the hidden money via my phone. Sure enough, Terry had concealed the cash in my desk, igniting a storm of fury within me. I felt immense gratitude toward Michelle. Without her prior warning, I would have been blindsided and defenseless against Terry's accusations. With the evidence securely saved, I waited for Terry's next move. As anticipated, The following day, the police, accompanied by Terry, knocked on my door. I greeted them with feigned surprise, inquiring how I could help. The officers explained that Terry had accused me of stealing $3,500 from him. I stood my ground, denying any involvement with the money and stressing that theft was against my principles. Terry, impatient and agitated by the officers' neutral stance, directly accused me of lying. He claimed theft was habitual for me and a significant reason behind our divorce. His audacity was staggering, and he challenged me, clearly confident that I would be cornered by his plot. However, he was gravely mistaken. When one of the officers asked for my side of the story, suggesting a potential search for the cash, Terry smirked, convinced he was about to witness my downfall, but the tide was about to turn. I assured the officers of my innocence and hinted that I had tangible proof of what had really transpired. Despite Terry's protests urging the officers to dismiss my claims and arrest me on the spot, they remained professional and willing to examine the evidence I had prepared. Terry's underestimation of me was about to unravel spectacularly. I was ready to present the video evidence, eager to demonstrate not only my innocence but also Terry's deceitful scheme to entrap me. This moment had the potential to redefine everything, exposing Terry's manipulation and fully vindicating me. As the officers mentioned the need for an investigation before making any arrests, I noticed a brief flicker of unease cross Terry's face, but it quickly shifted back to indignation. It was clear that the officers were not impressed by his impatience or eagerness to see me arrested. I led them to my workspace, revealing the hidden cash that Terry was convinced would incriminate me. His smug demeanor briefly returned, believing he had me cornered. I acknowledged the presence of the money but clarified that I hadn't placed it there. I informed the officers about the comprehensive surveillance system I had installed throughout my apartment, emphasizing my independence and the lack of need for anyone else's consent for these measures. This setup, I explained, would not only validate my innocence but also identify the true culprit behind the cash's placement. Terry's confidence faltered at the mention of the surveillance, yet he quickly dismissed the need to review the footage, arguing that the discovery of the money was sufficient evidence against me. However, the officers corrected him, insisting on performing their duties without interference and expressing their willingness to view the camera footage for a clearer understanding of the events. I promptly handed my phone to the officers, showing them the recorded evidence that detailed how the cash had ended up in my closet. My precautions ensured that any personal moments were kept private, alleviating my concerns about sharing the footage. Caught off guard by the existence of the footage and unsure of its contents, Terry anxiously awaited the officers' reaction as they reviewed the video. His facade of confidence crumbled, revealing an undercurrent of panic. The footage displayed the events as they had unfolded, showcasing my innocence while implicating Terry in his attempt to frame me. This turn of events not only exonerated me but also shifted the officers' scrutiny squarely onto him. After reviewing the footage, the officers confronted Terry with evidence of his scheme to frame me. "It appears you were the one who placed the money in her closet with the intent of having your wife arrested," the officers stated, effectively dismantling Terry's narrative. His protests and denials crumbled under the weight of the undeniable evidence as he scrambled to find an explanation that could absolve him of his actions. As the officers detailed the potential legal consequences he now faced, including charges for misuse of police resources, harassment, and defamation, Terry's bravado quickly gave way to visible panic. He tried to dismiss the damning footage as some sort of error, but his fear was palpable. The police, unimpressed by his backtracking, turned their focus to me, asking if I wanted to press charges. In that moment, I saw Terry's demeanor shift from defiance to desperation, his eyes pleading for mercy. Although I had a clear opportunity to take legal action, I hesitated, contemplating the ramifications. "It's a misunderstanding," I suggested, hoping to resolve the situation without further entanglements with the law. The officers, however, stressed that the decision was mine alone. reinforcing my right to seek justice for the wrongs Terry had committed. Confronted with the reality of his precarious situation, Terry's plea for a private resolution took on an urgent tone. "Nancy, we can sort this out ourselves. There's no need to involve the police," he begged. The irony of his previous actions was not lost on me. "Why not, Terry? You were quick to involve them without cause," I countered, highlighting his baseless accusations and the serious implications of his scheme. His admission of a dumb mistake felt like a desperate attempt to evade the consequences of his actions, a last-ditch effort to salvage what little credibility he had left. Terry tried to justify his actions by claiming he wanted to level the playing field in our divorce, fearful that I'd gained the upper hand. When he mentioned his concern about losing the advantages of our prenuptial agreement, I couldn't hide my disdain for how low he had sunk. "I hope she's worth it," I told him, referring to his new partner and the lengths he had gone to for her. The reality of facing legal consequences visibly shocked him, draining the color from his face. I informed the officers of my decision to press charges, and they promptly handcuffed Terry. His reaction, a mix of tears and pleas for forgiveness, was both pitiful and repulsive. Any remnants of sympathy I might have felt vanished as I witnessed his true colors, especially after learning about his affair. His apologies, now hollow and meaningless, did nothing to sway me as the police led him away. Feeling a sense of liberation after Terry's departure, I reached out to Michelle to update her on the situation. While she wasn't surprised by the developments, I felt it was important to warn her about the potential fallout. Terry's impending release on bail might lead him straight to her, possibly suspecting her involvement in his arrest. Michelle, ever the steadfast figure, was prepared for any confrontation, even willing to sever ties with her son if it came to that. She expressed her readiness to face Terry, unafraid to voice her disgust over his actions and her role in exposing his scheme. Her resolve was clear: if Terry chose to cut her off for standing up for what was right, it would be a loss he'd have to bear. Michelle's disappointment in Terry had reached its peak, indicating a profound shift in their relationship. Her stance reflected a deep-seated disillusionment with his behavior, signaling the end of any tolerance she had for his antics. As I contemplated the aftermath of everything that had transpired, Michelle decided it was time for a significant change in her will. "I'm thinking of disinheriting him," she revealed, expressing her unwillingness to allow someone who had shattered our lives to benefit from her wealth. The revelation of her son's criminal actions and betrayal was too much for her to overlook. Hearing Michelle's decision was overwhelming. Tears were hard to hold back. It was reassuring to know I had someone firmly in my corner, ready to stand against the injustice I faced. Michelle, more than just a mother-in-law, had become a source of comfort and a promise of new adventures post-divorce, starting with a trip we had planned together. As for Terry's arrest, I chose not to sue him, opting instead to use the situation as leverage to expedite our divorce. The prenuptial agreement worked in my favor, securing me a substantial portion of our assets and ensuring that he covered my legal expenses. Terry's devious plans backfired, leaving him not only financially depleted but also losing his affair partner when she realized the impact of his decisions on her future. His misguided belief in her affection only compounded his losses. The fallout from our divorce, the affair, and his arrest caused a rift within his family. Many distanced themselves, unable to condone his actions. A significant confrontation with Michelle ended with her disowning him, severing what little family connection remained. For me, this period marked a transformation. The divorce not only secured my financial independence but also allowed me to forge a stronger bond with Michelle. Our travels, from California to a planned trip to Italy, have been a source of joy and healing. While I've paused dating to focus on my mental health, life has been fulfilling, with each day bringing new lessons and opportunities for personal growth.